I rested my hand on the doorknob, heart pounding the way it did before a firefight, not the way it should beat for a daughter coming home after 15 years. My name is Grace Allen. I'm 36, commander of a special operations unit in the United States Navy, a unit that, on paper, never existed. For 15 years, Grace disappeared into coded orders, encrypted reports, midnight flights over the Red Sea, and dusty outposts straddling the Iraq-Iran border. Family was just hurried letters sent to the old address, bank transfers to my mother every month, no questions ever asked. Tonight, I was coming back. No parade, no medals, just a battered duffel and a pair of boots worn thin from too many miles. It was nearly midnight, but every window in the house glowed bright. For a second, I thought maybe they were waiting for me. Just one hug, one, "Are you okay?" But I was wrong. The door swung open. My mother, Judith, was there, phone in hand, eyes never leaving the screen. The air was thick with cheap wedding perfume and the shrill giggles of young women. All down the hallway, flowers hung from banisters, balloons floated by the ceiling. Where my old childhood photos used to be, there was a massive poster. Happy engagement, Lily and Tyler. My little sister's big day. I was a stranger in my own home. Mom turned, thrust a lone pillow into my arms. "We turned your room into the wedding storage, honey. Here, take this." Her voice was breezy, more like a hotel clerk than a mother denying her daughter a bed after all those years. I stood there, lips trembling from cold and humiliation. On the stairs, Lily's laughter trickled down, high and sharp, a reminder that joy belonged to someone else tonight. Did anyone miss me? Or was I just some relic from a past they'd outgrown? I dropped my bag by the wall. For a split second, memories rushed in. The afternoons Dad taught me archery on the back lawn. The 4th of July fireworks I watched from the barn roof as a kid. All of it erased. The name my father carved into the entryway for me, covered now by a sign that read, "Wedding Headquarters." My breath froze, my insides hollowed out. Lily, always the star, appeared at the top of the stairs in a glittery white sleep shirt, wine glass in hand. "Oh, you're back. No warning at all." Her voice had that half-accusing, half-unconcerned lilt only she could pull off. Behind her, Tyler, her fiancé, straightened his tie, gave me the world's politest smile. "Grace, good to see you. Sorry, it's kind of crowded right now." Polite, but cold. They were lost in planning their fairy tale wedding, and I was given a pillow and a place to sleep somewhere. Mom gestured for me to head toward the shed beside the horse stalls. "It's clean enough in there," she said, like she was doing me a favor. But I knew that place. The old mower, saddles no one used, boxes of Christmas lights from years ago. I walked down the hallway, steps slow and heavy, my uniform drawing the occasional glance from strangers helping with wedding prep. No one asked where I'd been. No one said, "Welcome home." The shed's single bulb flickered, yellow and weak. The mattress was old and lumpy, the blanket thin. I sat on the edge, my back against a wooden wall. Through the little window, I could see the house, golden squares of light glimmering on the snow. I could hear their voices, Mom and Lily fussing over flowers and food, the soft rumble of Dad's voice quickly lost in the chaos. This house used to be mine. Now it was a rest stop for a ghost. I dug into my bag for my encrypted phone, the kind you only carry if you're still on the radar of people who erase secrets for a living. A missed call from Sam, my old teammate from Kandahar. I almost texted back, but how could I explain to anyone what it felt like to be erased by your own family? How could anyone here picture that just months ago I was running from explosions in Syria, flames at my back, my name called over the radio by someone desperate not to lose me? The wind screamed outside. Suddenly, I heard my mother's voice from the kitchen, drifting out through the hall. Grace is back now. Maybe she'll finally do something useful with herself. Not everyone in uniform is a hero, you know. Silence. I clenched my teeth. So after all these years risking my life, I was still the family failure, an invisible guest in my own story. I curled up in the dark, my hand clutching the dog tags around my neck. Alan, Grace, U.S. Navy, blood type O+. I wondered, if I disappeared tomorrow, would any of them even notice? Or would I just blow away with the winter wind? And if my secrets ever came to light, would anyone here have the courage to face who I really am? The kitchen lights went out, the laughter fading to hush. I stared at the scarred ceiling beams, each mark a memory never quite healed. I've survived fire, bullets, the howling dark, but never have I felt so small, so lost, so utterly alone as I did that night in the house that still bore my name. Will tomorrow change anything? Or am I just a silent shadow, forever erased from the family that made me?
The laughter and voices echoed through every room, filling the air so thick I could barely breathe. I moved down the hallway, letting my fingers trail along the empty places where my childhood photos used to hang, snapshots of me in Little League, birthday hats, tangled hair after a day at the stables. Now every frame was gone, replaced by ribbons, pastel streamers, and glowing engagement shots of Lily and Tyler, two perfect faces in love. People like to ask what hurts more than being betrayed by someone in the field. I used to think nothing could match that, but being quietly erased by your own family, standing in your childhood home, and realizing it's no longer yours, cuts deeper than any wound. The question kept circling my mind. If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone here even remember I'd ever been part of this house? At the kitchen table, my mother and Lily huddled together over wedding magazines and fabric samples. Mom smoothed Lily's hair, her voice sweet and full of pride. "You'll be the most beautiful bride in Montana, honey. No one else even comes close." She used to say things like that to me. Now, I was invisible. No one asked how my trip was, if I was tired, or why the scar on my hand was still so fresh. Maybe I had already become a ghost, passing through on my way somewhere else. Tyler strolled in, uniform pressed, tie sharp, smile sharper. He had a way of holding everyone's attention, telling stories about the Army and his friends at the base. If anyone dared mention my service, my mother changed the subject with a practiced flick. Cupcakes, dresses, flower arrangements, anything but Grace. Tyler nodded politely at me and then turned away, as if he couldn't quite remember what I was doing there. Even the old neighbors, watching from their porch, whispered behind their hands, "That's Lily's sister. Back from wherever. Probably just here to crash the wedding." I tried to believe silence would protect me, but all it did was let me disappear. Lily was everywhere, spinning through the house, trying on shoes, veils, bits of jewelry. She'd always loved being the center of attention, and I'd always stepped aside for her. As kids, I used to carry her on my back through the orchard, clean the mud off her knees after every spill. Now it felt like there was a canyon between us. "What's Grace going to wear to the wedding?" she called out once, and my mother answered, "Maybe she can help with the chairs, or just watch the cars." Words like that don't just hurt, they stick, long after the day is over. Worst of all, I caught myself starting to believe them. I tried to help, tying ribbons, hanging lanterns, ironing napkins. Every time, someone stepped in, gently nudging me out of the way like I might ruin something precious. Mom looked at me once, a shadow of pity in her eyes. "You're not getting any younger, Grace. You should really think about settling down." I almost laughed. How do you explain to your family that romance is a risk you can't afford? That every relationship you've ever had has lived and died in airports and lonely barracks? We all gathered for dinner. The table was full, everyone talking at once about cakes and rings and who was picking up the tuxedos. I sat at the far edge, picking out a plate of wilted salad. No one asked where I'd been. No one wanted to know what I thought. My father met my eyes once, his gaze tired and distant, but he looked away. Maybe he remembered what it felt like to come home from war and find nothing waiting for him. Maybe he was just too tired to fight the old battles. I wished, just once, someone would stand up for me, the way I'd stood for strangers on foreign soil. In this house, nobody would. Outside, the snow started again, heavy and soft. Lily squealed with delight as Tyler gave her a delicate necklace, "Love Always" engraved on the charm. Everyone clapped, passing the box around, letting it sparkle under the lights. I wondered if I vanished right then, would anyone notice? Or would they just slide my chair away and carry on? Anyone who's ever felt invisible at their own family table knows nothing is colder. I slipped outside, back across the yard to my spot in the shed. Alone in the dark, I pulled out an old photo. My team, sweaty and grinning, my arms slung around Sam's shoulder, my Echo strike badge shining. I used to think if my family knew the truth, they'd be proud. Now it was just a secret I wore like a second skin. The question came again. How long would I keep waiting to be seen? Would I ever have the nerve to speak up, demand to be noticed, to be loved for who I really am? Or was I doomed to be a silent shadow, hoping for a miracle that would never come? I couldn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. One moment was waiting, just around the corner, ready to tear this quiet world wide open.
The shed was freezing. I lay awake on the old mattress, breath fogging in the moonlit air. Every sound from the house reached me. Laughter, glasses clinking, a pop song playing on someone's phone. It was like listening to someone else's life from 1,000 miles away. A sharp wind rattled the window. I pulled my jacket tighter and stared at the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the old wood. I thought of all the nights I'd spent awake in places much harsher than this. Military tents in Afghanistan, crumbling schoolhouses on the edge of nowhere. I'd survived with nothing but a sidearm, a radio, and the promise that someone out there was counting on me. But in this place, the silence was different. It was personal. Outside, footsteps crunched on the snow. I tensed, old instincts kicking in. It was only Dad stepping outside for a cigarette, shoulders hunched against the wind. I watched from the window as he leaned on the railing, his face hidden in shadows. For a second, I wondered if he might walk over, maybe ask if I was okay. But after a few minutes, he turned and slipped back into the warm glow of the house, closing the door behind him. The isolation settled in deeper. I fished my encrypted phone from the side pocket of my duffel. 2 missed messages from Sam, my Echo Strike teammate. Just simple check-ins, no questions, no demands. Out there, I still had a tribe. Here, I had nothing but memories. Part of me wanted to grab my keys and leave, drive all night until the landscape changed, until my past was behind me again. But something kept me rooted. Maybe it was hope? Maybe stubbornness. Maybe just a soldier's refusal to run from a fight. The next morning, the house buzzed with even more energy. Wedding planners and distant relatives filled the kitchen, arms full of bouquets and place cards. I barely got a nod as I slipped in for coffee. Lily swept past in a flurry of silk and perfume, already on her phone with the florist. Mom caught my eye. "You can help in the barn, Grace. The rental guys are bringing the tables. Make yourself useful." Her tone was cheerful, almost sing-song, but the message landed hard. In the barn, I found myself hauling chairs, setting up folding tables with strangers who didn't know me. One of them, a guy in his 20s with a backwards cap, offered a half smile. "You family?" he asked. I hesitated. Sort of. He shrugged and went back to work. That was it. My whole history, my blood, erased by 2 words. Partway through, I heard voices drifting from the main house. Tyler's smooth laugh, Mom's proud tone, Lily's high chatter. I caught just a fragment. Tyler's the real deal. Army intelligence. He's going places. Unlike... Her voice faded as the barn door slammed. She didn't have to finish the sentence. It shouldn't have bothered me. I'd faced bullets, bombs, nights so cold they made your teeth ache. But nothing in those years of combat training prepared me for the sting of being dismissed by your own mother, of being talked about as an afterthought in your own home. At lunch, the table was crowded, but there was no seat set for me. I stood awkwardly at the counter, holding a plate, listening as Lily described her wedding theme in detail: rustic but chic, mason jars, lace runners. Tyler leaned in, whispering something in her ear that made her blush. Mom glanced at me, then turned away. I forced down a few bites of cold chicken, every muscle tight. I kept thinking, if only they knew. If only they understood what I'd done, what I'd survived, what I'd risked for people who would never know my name. I went back out to the barn and found myself alone. I sat on a hay bale, phone in hand, thumbing through old texts from Sam and the rest of my team. Pictures from overseas, sandstorms, sunrise over the wire, faces I trusted with my life. Out there I'd felt needed. Here, I was just in the way. My mother's words echoed. Not everyone in uniform is a hero. Maybe not, but in some corners of the world, being invisible had saved my life. In this one, it was slowly killing me. I thought about packing up again, disappearing before anyone could say goodbye. But something made me stay. I wasn't ready to let them win. Not yet. What I didn't know was that everything was about to change. One moment was coming that would force the whole family, this whole town, to see me, truly see me, for the very first time.
The engagement party arrived like a storm front, sweeping in with rented linens and polished boots. For the first time in years, the Morgan house buzzed with the kind of excitement I used to dream about as a kid. Trucks lined the driveway, guests spilled onto the lawn, chattering and laughing under strings of fairy lights. I stood by the barn doors, hands shoved in the pockets of my old slacks, trying to disappear into the background. Inside, the transformation was almost unreal. The barn, once filled with hay and dust, had been turned into a rustic ballroom. White chairs in perfect rows, tables draped in burlap and lace, wildflowers spilling from mason jars. Everywhere I looked, there was evidence of Lily's vision, perfect, sparkling, untouched by the years I'd spent away. Lily moved through the crowd in a navy dress, her hair swept up, surrounded by a dozen bridesmaids in soft blues and creams. She laughed with her friends, posed for photos, and held Tyler's hand like she was holding on to a piece of her own future. Tyler wore his army uniform, ribbons glinting on his chest, every inch the golden boy. I watched as guests circled them, local politicians, distant cousins, a handful of men from Tyler's unit. Mom beamed, showing them off as if she'd built this perfect life with her own two hands. I kept to the edges, sipping flat punch, nodding politely at the few people who remembered me. There was always a hum in the air, whispers following me from one end of the room to the other. That's Lily's sister, right? The one who never settled down? What's she even doing now? I didn't answer. I'd learned that some questions are just noise. A familiar voice caught me off guard. Well, if it isn't Grace Allen, didn't think we'd see you back in Montana. I turned to see Mary Sue, the town gossip, wineglass in hand. She eyed my wrinkled button-down with a smirk. Didn't bring a date? Or maybe you're just here for the cake. I offered a tight smile, turning away before she could dig any deeper. Partway through the evening, the crowd shifted as Tyler's commanding officer arrived. People straightened up, conversations paused, and a ripple of curiosity ran through the room. The officer, a tall, broad-shouldered man in formal blues, made his way straight toward the happy couple. He greeted Tyler with a firm handshake, then turned to Lily with the air of someone who's met 100 versions of this moment. Then, unexpectedly, his eyes found mine. He froze. For a long, heavy moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Commander Allen," he said, voice ringing out
clear as a bell. Forks stopped midair. Every conversation went silent. He stepped forward, snapped a salute. "Ma'am, didn't expect to see you here." The shock on my mother's face was absolute. Lily's mouth hung open. Tyler looked as if someone had pulled the rug out from under him. It was like a stone dropped into a still pond. Every person in that barn turned to stare. For the first time, someone spoke my real name, my true title. Not Lily's sister, not the dropout, not the disappointment, just Commander Allen. The officer dropped his salute, eyes shining. "You changed my life," he said, quietly, voice only for me. "I never forgot what you did over there." I felt every eye in the room on me. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even a hint of awe, but mostly I felt my own heart pounding. 15 years of secrets, sacrifices, and silent victories. 15 years invisible. And here, in the most unexpected place, someone finally saw me. But the feeling was short-lived. The moment shattered as Tyler's friends circled in, peppering me with questions I couldn't answer, jokes I didn't want to hear. I smiled, nodded, then slipped away, heart racing. Later, I stood outside beneath the cold Montana stars, the barn alive with music and laughter behind me. My phone buzzed, a coded alert from my secure network. I checked the screen and felt the blood drain from my face. Unauthorized access. Echo strike file breach. Location. Local device. My breath caught. Only 2 people in this county had that kind of clearance. One was me. The other was Lily. Suddenly, the party, the family, all of it, faded away. My old life, the one I'd kept hidden, was colliding head-on with the present. The cost of silence was about to come due, and no one in that barn had any idea what storm was coming for all of us. It was nearly midnight when I slipped out from the party, the echo of the officer's words still buzzing in my chest. The barn behind me glowed with yellow light and music, but I felt the weight of another world pressing in. My hand shook as I scrolled through the encrypted warning on my phone. Echo strike file breach. Local device. Only 2 Navy-issued laptops in this whole town. Mine, locked away, password 20 characters deep. The other belonged to Lily. The realization hit hard, sudden as a gunshot in the night. I crossed the frozen yard, boots crunching over the last of the spring snow. Lily's window glowed softly. I knocked once. She opened it, startled, cheeks flushed from champagne and celebration. She barely had time to whisper, "What's wrong?" before I showed her the screen. "Someone tried to open a restricted file," I said, keeping my voice low and even, "from this house. Your device." Her eyes widened. I didn't mean to. Grace, I swear, I didn't even know what it was. I was working on my thesis, reading policies about women in special operations. Something just popped up. She fumbled for words, panic trembling in her hands. It was labeled Storm Ember. I thought it was poetic, for inspiration. I stepped inside, shutting the window behind me. That file isn't poetic. It's the most dangerous thing on that laptop. Her voice shrank. What happens now? My mind spun through layers of protocols and classified fallout. When someone tries to open that file, the military wipes everything. Not just the data. They erase witnesses, deployments, entire histories. Sometimes, even people. Lily sat on her bed, knuckles white on the blanket. For the first time, she looked like a little girl again, uncertain, desperate for reassurance. But I just wanted to learn. I never wanted to hurt anyone. It doesn't matter, I said softly. Someone will use this mistake to bury everything. And now we're both targets. She looked up at me, eyes glistening with fear. What do we do? I took a deep breath, pushing down the old instinct to run, to hide, to go silent. We don't run, Lily. Not this time, because this isn't just a file, it's a blood debt. She stared at me, hungry for answers. I owed her more than anger. So for the first time in over a decade, I began to tell her what I'd never told anyone, not even mom or dad. We were 6 women, no names, no patches, no official ranks. We called ourselves Echo Strike. Our mission? Take down a terror finance network buried along the border. Storm Ember wasn't about glory, it was survival. Find the source, follow the money, extract the data, then vanish. I watched her take it in. My mind reeled back to those nights, landing in black helicopters under moonless skies, radio static in my ear, a 48-hour op that stretched into 12 hellish days. By day 3, our comms staled, supplies gone, the village already compromised. Gunfire every night. We patched wounds with shreds of uniform, drank from jury-rigged batteries. By day 8, we lost Sasha, dragged out by a militia, thrown in a pickup, gone. "You got her back?" she whispered. I nodded, the memory sharp. We broke every protocol, faked Red Cross papers, bartered in back alleys, risked everything. We pulled her out. No medals, no press, no one ever knew. "But why?" she whispered. "Why hide you?" I met her eyes. Because we were women. Because our mission made the wrong men uncomfortable. They buried us on purpose. Lily went silent, processing the story, the risk, the betrayal, the real weight of what she'd stumbled into. We sat in that cold bedroom as the world outside kept spinning, the celebration blaring on. I felt for the first time something fragile but real, a bond, a painful honesty neither of us could turn away from. The next morning, her email arrived. Academic status review, scholarship suspended, investigation pending, all for opening the wrong file. But that wasn't the end. As I checked my old contacts one by one, I saw the pattern. Mentions of Storm Ember disappearing from military logs, operation names erased from the Pentagon's secure servers. The old game, played in shadows, was starting all over again. And for the first time, I knew, if we wanted the truth to survive, we couldn't hide. We had to fight. Not just for us, but for every woman who had ever been made invisible, used, and thrown away. The war was coming home.
By sunrise, my world was divided into, on one side, the life I'd fought for, honor, loyalty, the silent bonds of Echo Strike. On the other, the family I was supposed to protect. Both now threatened by one reckless click. Lily's face was pale, eyes hollow after the university suspension email. She'd tried to apologize, tried to justify her curiosity, but there was nothing left to say. We were both caught in a system that preferred silence to truth. I went out to the frozen yard, breath curling in the early morning air. The ranch looked the same as it did when I was a teenager, except now every memory was colored by a new, aching urgency. The barn doors were open, tables from the party half collapsed, the air heavy with the ghost of last night's laughter. The storm had passed, but the damage was just beginning. Inside the house, Mom was bustling in the kitchen, determined to act like nothing was wrong. Dad read the paper, eyes flicking up at me but saying nothing. Tyler was gone, probably out for a morning run. Lily didn't come down at all. I realized then just how fragile this family peace had always been, how quickly it could shatter. My phone buzzed, a secure message, coded and unmistakable. 3 names: Marisol Vega, Demolition and Tactics; Sasha Tran, Comms and Crypto; Maya Brooks, Logistics. My team. I hadn't spoken to them in years, but the breach had triggered old protocols. I typed 3 short words. "It's happening. Assemble." Within an hour, replies started coming in. Marisol, took them long enough. Sasha, been ready for this since day 1. Maya, where do we start? I felt my pulse steady, a sense of mission returning. The women I trusted most in the world were scattered across the country, each with new names, new lives, but one thread still tied us together: Storm Ember.
and the promise we made never to let them erase us. The threat wasn't just to Lily and me now. Every member of Echo Strike, every analyst, every old handler whose name appeared in those files was suddenly at risk. The DoD wouldn't stop at suspension or an academic hearing. They'd scrub records, reassign personnel, make inconvenient people vanish into paperwork and closed-door briefings. We'd seen it happen before. But this time, we had our own evidence. I dug out my metal trunk from beneath the cot in the barn, my only piece of real luggage. Inside were encrypted drives, a battered field notebook, a helmet with a faded Echo E2 sticker. Proof not just of our mission, but of the orders that tried to make us ghosts. Would it be enough? Or would the weight of the Pentagon's secrets crush us again, leaving no trace for anyone to find? I sat down and drafted a message to an old contact, one I hoped I could still trust. Then I called Lily into the barn. She was shaken, but she listened. I showed her the notebook, the helmet cam footage, the signed deployment forms. I explained what we'd have to do. We're not running. We're not hiding. If they want to erase us, they'll have to do it in front of the whole world. Lily's voice was small. Will anyone believe us? I smiled, not with certainty, but with resolve. They'll have to, because this time, we're telling the story ourselves. We spent the afternoon preparing, gathering files, printing logs, copying drives. For every piece of evidence, I wrote down what it meant, which woman was there, what risks she took, who tried to bury her story. It was exhausting. A second battle fought in silence, but I felt more alive than I had in years. That night, I sat at the kitchen table while my family circled around me. Mom tried to ignore the tension. Dad watched me, saying little, but I could see something flicker behind his eyes, a glimmer of respect, maybe regret. Lily stood by my side. For once, the house felt like a unit, bracing for the unknown. As darkness fell, I wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would the world hear us out? Or would we be erased again, this time for good? One thing was certain. I wasn't alone anymore, and I wasn't afraid.
The hearing was held in a windowless conference room at the state capitol, 3 stories underground. Security was tight. Metal detectors, ID checks, silent men in dark suits scanning every face. Lily sat at the center of a long table, hands folded, uniform crisp but stripped of insignia. Across from her, 3 civilian investigators and a cold-eyed Pentagon liaison. I stood in the doorway, my own dress uniform perfectly pressed, medals polished for the first time in years. For once, I didn't feel like a shadow. The tension in the air was electric. No one expected me. Not like this. I walked in, head high, and set a battered metal case on the table, popped the latches. One by one, I laid out our encrypted drives, field notebook, and a helmet with the Echo Strike call sign still scratched into the cam mount. The room went quiet. "Before you continue," I said, voice steady, "I'd like to enter these as evidence. Documentation of Operation Storm Ember. Every objective, every risk, every name the Department of Defense tried to erase." The Pentagon liaison tried to object, but the lead investigator raised a hand. "Let her speak." I told the story. 12 days cut off from the world. A team of women sent where no one else would go. Names, dates, coordinates. Sasha's capture. Marisol's forged paperwork. Every rule we broke to save a life. Every order we followed that cost us our identities. I read aloud from the field log, quoted deployment memos, played helmet cam footage of the night we pulled Sasha from a burning village. I named commanders who had ordered us silent, analysts who signed off on deleting our mission. With every new fact, every hard piece of evidence, the faces across the table changed, skepticism to surprise, then something like shame. Finally, Lily stood up, her voice clear and unwavering. "My sister did not fail. She was hidden because her courage made the wrong people uncomfortable. We were never meant to be invisible. We were made invisible."
There was no applause, no drama, just a heavy, ringing silence. The kind of silence that means something has shifted for good. The official record of Storm Ember was reinstated. Lily's suspension was dropped. An internal review was launched into the military's handling of Echo Strike. For the first time in 15 years, my story, our story, was on paper, undeniable, unerasable. We drove home in quiet. Montana's open sky stretched endlessly ahead. At dinner, Dad poured sweet tea, his hands steady for once. Mom set 4 places at the table. No one said much, but everything had changed. For the first time since I could remember, there was a seat for me, not just a spot at the counter. Afterwards, I stood in the yard, staring up at the stars. Lily came out, wrapped in a blanket. "You're not invisible anymore," she said softly. I smiled, feeling the truth of it for the first time. Neither are you. Minnie Hook. But as the cold air settled, a new question flickered in my mind. Now that the truth was out, what would we do with our freedom? Would we disappear quietly, or build something lasting from what we'd reclaimed? I didn't know, but for the first time, I wanted to find out.